Welcome to Becoming an Effective Executive Director. 5 keys to elevating leadership style, enhancing operations, and empowering your team. I am Maritza Adonis, and I have the distinguished pleasure of serving as your facilitator, guest lecturer, and chief architect of today's session, powered by MTA Visions Center for Advocacy, Leadership, and Entrepreneurship. So welcome. The information provided in today's webinar does not constitute financial, legal, or other professional advice and is general in nature. It does not take into account your specific circumstance and should not be acted on without full understanding of your current situation and future goals and objectives by a fully qualified advisor. In doing so, you risk making a commitment to a product and/or strategy that may not be suitable to your needs. While we try to, of course, ensure the accuracy and completeness of the information that we provide, MTA Visions LLC cannot offer any undertaking or guarantees, either expressly or implicitly, including liability towards third parties, regarding how correct, complete, or up-to-date the information that we provide to you may be. We reserve the right to supplement content shared and information provided in our webinars, coaching sessions, and related products at any time, or to change or delete any information contained or views expressed accordingly. MTA Visions accepts no liability for any loss or damage whatsoever arising out of the participation in our webinars, coaching sessions, and related products, including but not limited to the reliance of contents shared therein. We'll start with some housekeeping. We'll move into the purpose of today's session. You'll learn a little bit more about me, your facilitator, Maritza Adonis. We'll get into our chatting. We'll talk about some learning, assessing, and we'll unlock the top 5. We'll then move into a period of Q&A. We'll go into next steps, and we'll give you some contact on how you can stay in touch. A little bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar will last approximately 60 minutes. Everyone is muted, but you can be unmuted when acknowledged. We want you to participate and engage in the chat box when prompted, and we encourage you to use the live chat function to type your questions via direct message. Remember that questions submitted during registration are guaranteed a response. Live questions will be answered time permitting. Pay attention and take lots of notes. Copyright notice. Today's presentation is copyrighted by MTA Visions LLC, all rights reserved. No part of this publication will be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including and not limited to photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law. For any permission requests, please write to teach@mtavisions.com. purpose of today's webinar is to enable new and experienced leaders to prioritize the 5 keys necessary to elevate their leadership style, enhance operations, and empower their nonprofit team. You will leave this webinar with a succinct understanding of what is an executive director and how to find your leadership style. Information on what are the top priorities to enhance your operations, and insights on the 5 necessary keys to elevate your leadership style, enhance operations, and empower your nonprofit team. A little bit about me, Maritza Adonis. I serve as the Chief Executive Officer of MTA Visions Global. We are a corporate social responsibility and government relations firm based in Washington, D.C. I'm also the Acting Executive Director of Professional Development for MTACALE, who's hosting today's webinar. MTACALE is the Center for Advocacy, Leadership, and Entrepreneurship. I've served on over 10 national boards where I have advised executive directors. I have provided counsel to several nonprofits, small businesses, on their operations strategy, programming, stakeholder engagement, finances, fundraising, leadership development, and so much more. I have participated in the global search for an executive director, so I understand exactly where the personality types, the skill sets, and knowledge necessary to be an effective executive director. I am an award-leading leader. I received the Silver Key, which is the highest law students award that the American Bar Association has provided to any leader. I received awards on most leadership. I received pro bono highest honors, which is the leader that contributes the most amount of free legal support. I've received honors as the National Security Leader of 2023 from one of the leading think tanks in Washington, D.C. I've been honored by one of my alma maters, the Queen Mary, as one of the honorees for civic engagement and leadership. Some other great former accolades: I've served as the White House delegate to Global Entrepreneurship in India, Global Innovation Fellow with the United States Department in China, and I was a Millennial Business Fellow with the National Supplier Diversity Council. All in all, I'm a citizen diplomat, United States lobbyist, a corporate social responsibility and government relations affairs executive, political diplomacy and diversity expert, and my favorite, a global youth advocate. So let's get started. So I want to make sure that everyone is on the same level and on the same grounds. We're going to first start with the basics, defining what is an executive director, what makes for an effective leader, what are some leadership styles, operations 101, and what is a team? And then we'll move into some assessments, which would be a quick assessment to give you a taste of what our actual audits look like. We'll go into some questions that you can consider when you're looking at assessing your operations. And then finally, we will unlock the top 5 keys necessary for you to elevate your leadership, enhance your operation, and empower your team. So let's chat. Let's learn some things about executive director. What is an executive director? And we will use definitions coming from the Oxford Dictionary. According to the Oxford Dictionary, an executive director is the most senior person in an organization or department with responsibility for making daily business decisions. This is important to consider because when we're thinking about an executive director, oftentimes we don't like to provide them with the exact same responsibilities as a CEO. But an executive director is essentially a CEO of a nonprofit organization. Our definition in-house is that an executive director is the person hired or selected to power a vision, manage resources, and protect the legacy of a cause for a non-for-profit organization. So it's just going beyond just that senior person, because when you say senior, oftentimes senior is analogous with someone with over 15 and 20 years of experience, Whereas we've seen so many youth that may have 1 or 2 years of experience of leadership have been an incredible leader. So we don't just want to limit it to senior person. And it's the Oxford Dictionary definition talks about the responsibility for making daily business decisions. At MTACALE, I took it a step further and said, it's not just taking the daily business decisions and taking responsibility for those, because when you're looking at the full team, and we'll look at that in a little bit, the executive director does not have the full responsibility for every daily business decision. They are delegating that task to other members in their team. So I wanted to refine its definition a little bit more and say, now this person is responsible for powering a vision, because the responsibility is not for making that decision day to day. We want executive directors that are going to own a vision. They need to be able to go beyond just owning that vision and managing the day-to-day resources. It's not enough for you to be able to make decisions day to day, but if you're not managing the resources properly, then your decision-making doesn't have as much weight. In fact, part of that decision-making is your ability to manage your resources. And then my favorite part of this definition is that this needs to be someone that's hired or selected to protect the legacy of a cause for a non-profit organization. You know, so many organizations that hired executive directors that have had 30 plus years of experience, but there's no one that's interested or engaged in that particular organization's mission. And it's not for a lack of resources. It's not for a lack of not having a great team, but it's because that particular executive director is not protecting the legacy of the particular cause. They might be protecting the legacy of the organization and being sure that it's powered with resources, but are they invested in the cause? Are they inspiring others who are part of that team to also invest their daily resources and in the daily work that they're partaking in, ensuring that it's advancing that cause? Very, very much different and very, very much nuanced. And it's something that we really take into consideration when we're coaching our executive directors and leaders of nonprofit organizations and beyond. Now that you know what executive director is, let's look into effective leadership, because we're not just wanting to equip executive directors in today's session, new and aspiring, but we wanted to make sure that we're equipping effective executive directors. And there's 2 things we want you to understand as an executive director. You need to be effective and you need to be a leader. Effective, according to Oxford Dictionary, is defined as producing the result that is wanted or intended, producing a successful result. A leader is a person who leads a group of people, especially the head of a country or organization. Our MTACALE definition is effective leadership is the action of eradicating the problems and deploying sustainable solutions related to an organizational cause, mission, and or priority. Let's break this down a little bit more. According to Oxford, in order for you to be an effective leader, you just needed to produce a result that was successful. And this leader is someone that's the head of an organization. But we have so many examples where we have quote unquote successful results, but then the nonprofit tanks for various reasons. We have so many examples where we have a leader who understands the organization and maybe they're not producing any results, but the organization still thrives and has nothing to do with the leader, but everything to do with perhaps the branding of the organization or a team that's been a well-oiled machine that doesn't rely on whether or not the leader is effective. And so I took it a step further to define the MTACALE's definition of effective leadership, to turn it into beyond just an adjective and a noun, but to an adverb, something that describes an action that is in motion. So it is the act. And this leader, we know that they're effective if they're able to eradicate the problems. So too many often when organizations or nonprofits, for profit and profit, reach out to MTA Visions Global for consultancy, They'll ask us to do leadership trainings that helps them to solve the problem. Solving and eradicating are two different extremes. Solving could mean that it could be short term. They bring us in to conduct a diversity, equity, and inclusion or an empowering your team's audit for their senior leaders. We design a program, a policy, or an initiative that helps the organization to raise its profile for the next 5 years. But in order to ensure that the organization does not return back to the situation, it's our job to make sure that they eradicate the problem. So we go many steps further beyond just that training, policy, and program, and we provide a 360-degree advisory where we're doing all three: policy, training, and program. So this effective leader needs to eradicate the problem, not just a Band-Aid, not just a marketing scheme, but actually eradicate it, meaning it's extinguished. It doesn't exist. It's not going to return again. After you eradicate the problem, we know you're an effective leader if you've been able to deploy sustainable solutions. So now that we've been able to extinguish this, in order to ensure that it's fully extinguished, we need to make sure that the solutions that are being placed are sustainable beyond that leader, beyond another problem that organization may face. They need to be able to sustain. And then this problem that we're eradicating and the solution that we need to ensure it's sustainable has to be related to organization's cause, mission, or priority. We've seen so many great leaders that they get accolades. When we look at their organization, you say, but how? Organization's failing, but everyone likes the leader, so they're getting awarded. Or vice versa. The organization is thriving, but the leader is not doing a great job, but then the leader is getting an award. We need to make sure that if we're going to give a leader the title of effectiveness or give them the branding of an effective leader, that the problem that they're eradicating and the solution that they're deploying that's sustainable is directly related to their organization's cause, mission, and priority. Let's dig in some more. So we know what executive director is. We know what it takes to be an effective executive director. Now that you understand that, we want to briefly look at some leadership styles as proposed by the psychologist Kurt Lewin in 1969. Based on Kurt Lewin's research in the United States of looking at a variety of organizations, he narrowed it down to three types of leadership styles: autocratic leadership, democratic leadership, and laissez-faire leadership. Authoritarian leadership, or autocratic, is where leaders make decisions top down. It's usually when it requires quick action and quick decision making. Participative or democratic leadership is when decision making is made with the consultation of others. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily require quick action because you have the time to include the ideas and suggestions of others that are part of the team. Whereas laissez-faire leadership or delegative leadership puts the full trust into the members of the team to take ownership, to take lead in completing their respective tasks and related engagements. We have redefined Kurt Lewin's leadership styles to an action verb. Beyond theory, leadership style is the ability for that leader to identify and put into action their skills to organize, inspire, and execute. And we really break down leadership styles, and we actually do a quiz that helps you to assess what is your leadership style through our webinar on the masterclass on executive directors, Leadership 102, where we really help you to identify what's your abilities, how do you put into action these top three skills, and that's your ability to organize, your ability to inspire, and your ability to execute. That's what helps you to understand your leadership style. And I also want to note that the three top leadership styles, and this is where a lot of other leadership styles are derived from, those serve as indicators, markers. You don't necessarily have to embody one full area of the leadership style. You can have a hybrid, a matrix. Different types of leadership styles may vary depending on the organization, depending on the program, that you're working on. And so what we do in our Leadership 102 Master's class for executive directors is that we really help you to identify what is the ethos of the organization that you're leading. Who are you as a person? And then we draw on who you are, your authenticity, the ethos of your organization, and the various mission goals and products you have to work on, and help you to figure out, well, which type of leadership style should I deploy day to day, leadership style I need to deploy per engagement, and even your leadership style that you need to deploy for your team. Which brings us back into the next vocabulary that we want to make sure we're all on the same page on when we're talking about this: team. Oxford Dictionary defines team as a group of people who plays a particular game or sport against another group of people. A group of people who work together at a particular job. Our MTACALE definition is that a team is a group of people or stakeholders playing in their roles by the same rules to achieve maximum results. And I like the definition, and we chose to use both for Oxford Dictionary. So when I talk about a team, we think about team sport, because sports is the best example when it comes to team. Everyone needs to play their role, whether it's executive director, the assistant, the special assistants, the director of partnerships, philanthropy, director of programs, the finance director. Everyone on this team needs to play their role in order for this to be a team. If you are an executive director that's playing every role, and in our master class 102 leadership on executive director, we talk about what is your actual role. We break that down as executive director. And then we break down the roles of the top 5 key stakeholders or members of your team. If you're playing all those roles, then guess what? It's not a team. If one person that's a part of your unit is not playing their role, it's not a team. We need to make sure that everyone that's a part of that unit is playing their role. Same rules. This is looking at your mission, purpose, and goals. What are you guys uniting on? What is the organization's goal, mission, purpose? And is everyone working towards those 3 key factors within that organization? And then if you're working towards it, able bodies is not just enough. Busy bodies is overrated. You need to make sure that everyone's working towards achieving maximum results. So this is where we're really measuring what are our goals, our mission, our purpose, what measuring metrics are we going to put next to that, and what does it look like for each member of the team to achieve maximum results. So think about a basketball team. Each member of that team is not required to score the same amount of points, but each member of that team is required to maximize their role to achieve maximum results in their respective role, right? Same thing applies when we're talking about a team in a nonprofit. And then we want to look into the operations, because today we're talking about becoming an effective executive director, 5 keys to elevating your leadership style, enhancing your operations, and empowering your team. So in order to enhance the operation, you need to understand what is an operation. According to Oxford Dictionary, an operation is the department in a company that manages the way it produces goods or delivers services and makes sure its business practices are efficient. This is a pretty good definition, but of course we have an MTACALE definition. And we said that we actually married the definition for an actual medical operation with business operation, because it's truly the process of cutting open the parts of an organization in order to remove or repair the damaged part so the organization can work effectively and become sustainable. This is so important. Many times when organizations hire MTA Visions Global to conduct their operations audit, they have us hyper-focus on one area. They might say IT or people or HR. But when we're looking at operations, we ask them, Okay, you entrusted us to look at these areas. We will do this observation. We then will assess. But when we provide you with recommendations, are you willing to actually implement those recommendations? Because our recommendations include really cutting open the parts of that organization. And oftentimes organizations will give us their best foot and remind them, they're hiring us to do this audit for you. It's because you're going to be vulnerable with us. You're not going to hold information. You're not going to say, oh, you can only see parts of my drive. Oh, you can only just interview 2 of my employees. I don't want you to talk with anyone else. No, you're giving us the full liberty to really cut open all the parts of your organization. And then you're giving us the liberty to, in our recommendations, to remove. Part of your operations is being able to consistently go into that process of removal. And then you want to consistently go into that process of repairing. Some things don't need to be removed. Some people don't need to be removed, but you might need to provide some leadership development. That's the repair part. And this needs to be damaged. Too many times we see organizations will remove or repair something that does not need to be fixed. And that's all a part of hiring MTA Visions Global to conduct your operations audit for your nonprofit, because we're looking at what are some of the good things. And oftentimes the executive director yourself, you don't know what the good things are. It's going to take interviewing your special assistants to find out what that good thing is, because they're the ones that's looking at all aspects of the organization. It might take talking to your financial person on your team, because they're looking at the money and how it's spent. And so that includes, when we're talking about removing and repairing, it's just damaged parts, not the good parts of the organization. And the end goal is to make sure that it's an effective organization and that it's sustainable. So again, when we're doing audits, organizations will say, we entrust you in doing this audit. Maybe they might even say, okay, you can interview anyone you need to. You can look at our finances, our recruitment practices from years and years and beyond. But this recommendation you're giving us to expand upon our strategic plan seems hefty. What do you mean we need to look at this from a 5, 10, 20, 50-year lens? It's very important. That's the sustainability aspect of your operations. All right, we've chatted about some, key things you needed to learn in order for us to really talk to you about what it takes to become an effective executive director. And before we get into the 5 keys you need to unlock elevating your leadership style, enhancing operations, and empowering your teams. And now we're going to do a quick assessment to give you a taste of what some of our audits look like, and also to give you a taste of what it looks like when you take our Masterclass 102 for executive directors. So some of the questions that we look into, some of the key areas we look into when we're doing this operations audit, and we actually want you to do some of that with us today. I want you to assess the following. Think about, have I assessed as an executive director in the last 90 days? And 90 days is important because you should be assessing your operations at least once a quarter minimum. There should be other parts of your operation that you're assessing on a month-to-month basis. And there should be other parts of your operation that you're assessing weekly. But at least every 90 days, have you at least looked at, considered your HR, your human resources? And this is the whole life cycle, from posting positions online to even deciding who else am I missing on my team? What are some of the gaps I need to fill? The recruitment process, the onboarding process, the day-to-day creating the work environment, and then helping them to transition from the next role. What does your promotions look like? And then what it looks like for succession plan when you've lost a team member, or maybe a team member has to retire. It's looking at the full life cycle. And then we're also asking yourself, in the last 90 days as an executive director, have I looked at my IT, my information technology, my social media, my strategic plan, mission, vision, and goals? And we separate this from your strategic plan, because your strategic plan is your action steps towards achieving your mission, vision, and goals. Your mission, vision, and goals, you should be auditing that separately. And you're looking at these line by line. You're doing a micro audit on your mission, vision, and goals every quarter. You should be asking yourself, Have I looked at my staff? And this is where we're coming into more of the leadership training and development, which is what MTA also does. Your stakeholders, talk a little more about that in our 5 keys. Finances. 20 times nonprofits are operating at a deficit when it comes to their finances. And so you shouldn't be looking at writing annual grants. You should be looking at grants every month, actually. But at least on a quarterly basis, you're looking at what are some grants that I should be applying for in the next quarter? What are some grants that I need to renew last quarter? What are some grants that I should be writing and winning this quarter? Finance is a key aspect of the audit for nonprofit operations that executive directors need to consider that often goes by the wayside and is not often put into action until the very end. All right, we have chatted a bit about learning some of the key terms to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're talking about how you can become an effective executive director. We then went into action so that you could actually start to step into this role if you're not already in it. If you're already in it, some concrete things that you can take away from today's webinar on, I might need to go back and start looking at some of my operations. And now we're going to unlock the 5 keys necessary to elevating leadership style, enhancing operations, and empower your team. And remember, this is just a taste. This is an extraction from our masterclass for executive directors. And we're pulling from both our webinar and our assessments. But before we do that, we want you to take a quick 1-minute break to take in the information that we talked about today as it relates to the different terms that we have defined for you as it relates to this assessment, and then we'll get into the 5 keys. All right, welcome back to unlocking the 5 keys necessary to elevating your leadership style, enhancing your operations, and empowering your team. So, top 5 keys necessary to elevate your leadership style Enhancing operations and empowering your team is, you guessed it, you. It is important and essential to identify what type of leader you are. Are you an authoritarian leader? Are you a democratic leader? Are you a laissez-faire leader? Then going beyond that and saying, well, what are my leadership traits? Are you a leader that is organized? Are you a leader that is a visionary? Are you a leader that is mission oriented? There's so many traits that you need to identify so that you can become the leader that's going to drive the mission of the organization and ensure that you're effective, that's going to enhance operations, and that's ultimately going to empower the team. Once you've understood what type of leader you are, you then look at your leadership traits. You want to look at your leadership style. So your type of leader, you can start with earns. We gave you some of those key 3 areas. Your traits, when you join our masterclass for executive directors, we actually have you take a leadership quiz that breaks down your leadership style and your traits. Now you're in the best position to say, okay, here's how I'm going to approach how I champion my operations, how I lead my team, how I strategize on how I'm going to achieve the mission, purpose, and goals of this organization that I have been given the responsibility to steer. Then you're also looking at beyond just yourself. This is now you're looking at the science of who am I? What am I called to do? You want to look at the art. So the science was who am I? And that's looking at your leadership style, type, and traits. But the art is what am I called to do? What are some of my past experiences that qualify me to lead this organization's mission, purpose, and goals? What are some of my gaps? Being honest with areas that you need to improve, whether it's in your personality, whether it's in training in a particular area. When you're looking at the personal aspect, you're ensuring that you can provide a 360-degree whole leadership approach in how you tackle this organization's priorities, how you tackle this organization's goals, and therefore makes you that effective leader or effective executive director that you need to be in order to elevate yourself, but position yourself to enhance operations and ultimately empower the team. So the top 5 key necessary is you. From the arts perspective, the science perspective, the art, bringing in all your previous experiences, your life, where you come from, what I like to call your SES, your socioeconomic status, where you went to school, your friends, your parents, your upbringing, all that's important for you to bring your authenticity to the type of leader. This is the science. The type of leader you are, you're apply it to your leadership traits, and ultimately engage it in your leadership style so that you can be an effective executive director. The second of the 5 keys necessary to elevate your leadership, enhance your operation, and empower your team is that you need to plan. And we're talking about planning. Your Bible as an executive director is your strategic plan. You need to plan for the future. You need to plan for the now, and you need to plan for yesterday. When I talk about yesterday in the past, is you're consistently planning. You're looking at what have we done in the past that didn't work, that did work. So that's planning from the past, or rather taking from the past so that you can plan for the now. And when you're looking at the now, the now is your plan around the now is what you took from the past. And so when we say planning from the past, it's because before you got to the now, and that is day 90 as executive director or year 10 as executive director, years 1 through 9, you took that into account in order to help you with the now. Days 1 through 89, you took that all into account to help you with the now. So your planning has 3 areas. When you hire MTA Visions Global to serve as your management consultant, We're looking at it from planning from the past, planning of the now, and planning of the future. The future is usually not a hard one for many nonprofit organizations to do or executive directors to look towards, because oftentimes an executive director is responding to their board of governors or their council, whose part of their job is to help the organization not manage day to day, but to set the vision and the goals for that executive director to then outline what are the day-to-day steps and objectives that I need to take in order to ensure that my organization meets the mission, fulfills the goals, and takes into account the purpose of this organization. So the long-term planning is often not hard, because the part of what the council and your board of directors is doing is setting the long-term vision, mission, and purpose of that organization. So that number 2 key is plan, and that is your strategic plan. But again, it's looking from the past, the now, and the future. The third key of your top 5 keys necessary to elevate leadership, enhance operation, and empower your team is audit. And we talked about this in the assessment piece of today's session, where we gave you a couple of areas you should start to consider when you're thinking about auditing your organization minimum every 90 days. Audit is very necessary if you're going to enhance operations. And when you're auditing, you're not just looking at operations as a whole, you're looking at it from the parts. And remember when I gave the example of organizations might bring us in, but they might say, oh, I don't want you to interview everyone on my team. I want to limit your interaction to just myself. You look at some things, maybe a drive. We can't look at my bank statements for the last 5 years if you've been in Five's operation. We're looking at audits not just in the holistic sense and not waiting until it's time to meet with your executive team or waiting when it's time to report to board. You're looking at it by the respective pieces. So you're looking at it in silos. How is my team doing? This is where MTA Visions Global, we go out and we help your team with retreats. We're doing team building activities. We're helping the team members to identify their personalities. So the same training and coaching that we're providing to you as the executive director in our master classes, we also provide something similar for the members of your team so that they can understand who they are, their role, their responsibilities to the organization, their strengths and weaknesses, helping them to refine their knowledge, skills, and abilities so that they ultimately can champion the day-to-day tasks and ensure that they're meeting maximum and optimal results on behalf of the organization's mission, goals, and purpose. So when you're looking at audits, you're looking at the macro, everything as a whole, the organization and all the different parts on a high level. But then most importantly, you're breaking it out into the micro, and that it's the different layers, my team, my human resources, and this is the whole life cycle, my IT, what am I using, what am I not using, my finance, my budget, long-term, short-term, today, how much have we spent as of dates, how much do we spend 90 days ago, how much are we projected to spend 90 days from now, what do we have in reserve? You're looking at the audit from all these different layers, and you're thinking about it as a banana. I am peeling this banana before I digest the nutrients that this banana has to offer. For your organization, you're peeling back each layer of the organization before you're ready to deploy that organization, before that organization could be in the best space in order to be effective and to ultimately achieve its mission, purpose, and goals at optimal levels. Number 4 key that's necessary to elevate your leadership, enhance operations, and empower your team is you need to build. And when we're talking about building, we're referring to your ability to build not just an effective team, not just building effective plans, not just building an effective environment where your team can thrive. But we're also talking about building effective relationships. You absolutely need to have a strong executive team. That's a no-brainer. But you absolutely need to have a strong and effective board of directors, even more so. You absolutely need to have a strong project manager. You absolutely need to have a strong finance team member. Actually need to have a strong person that's recording, your historian, your assistant, that's keeping all the documents in one place. You absolutely need to have strong attorneys on your team. You absolutely need to have a lot of key stakeholders. That's the internal. You need to have a strong team that's helping you manage the day-to-day and working towards a day-to-day mission and purpose and goals of that organization. You need to have a strong board of directors that's going to not only support you, but keep you accountable to uphold the mission, goals, and purpose, but also provide you with the resources so that you can actually achieve all the goals that are necessary for the respective organization. But this includes building external contacts, building an external brand, building an external support system as it relates to this organization. A lot of times, executive directors have mastered what it looks like to build internally, but they haven't put in the work, they haven't put in the resources to master what it looks to build externally. This could be everything to the brand. It's not enough to just be passionate about the mission, purpose, and goals and have a team that's working day to day on it and have great board of directors that's supporting that vision, but you need to have built a great marketing brand. If no one knows what you're doing, if you don't have a marketing campaign or a social media campaign that's consistently reporting on the great work that you're doing, then you're not building the external aspect of this organization. And thus, you're not as an effective executive director as you can be. Another part of the building aspect is you want to make sure that beyond just building the brand and letting everyone know what you're working on. So as you can imagine, social media is important. Your logo, your colors, all this is important. Press releases. And we're back to 5 keys necessary to elevating your leadership style, enhancing operations, and empowering your team. So we were on number 4, key necessary to elevate your leadership and enhance operations. And we talked about, building internally your assets. So you do your planning for you and the leadership development and your training. How to your asset, your current asset, and that's building your team, building your board of directors, but externally. That's your brand, your volunteers, and all those that support your mission, but it's not necessarily part of the day-to-day aspect of the operations. The number 5 key, necessary to elevate your leadership, enhance operations, and empower your team to making you an effective executive director, is that you have to sustain. I cannot tell you enough how many organizations come in and they want us to complete the full audit. We do leadership training development. They even take some more recommendations, but they're not taking the necessary steps to ensure that all this work that we put into the audit, the leadership development training, the coaching, is actually positioning their organization to become sustainable, or that program or project that they're working on, to ensure that that's sustainable beyond their time. I can't tell you how many nonprofits that we come across that don't have a succession plan. So I know one of the things we talked about earlier, we talked about planning and we focus on strategic plan, but there are other plans that help you to sustain the organization, such as a succession plan that helps you to really define, well, what happens if I need to take 90 days off? What happens if I need to transition and there's a new executive director? How do I ensure that the program that we've invested so much money on, how do I ensure that we're not having to pay for new training for leaders, and so that we can maximize the amount of money that we're putting towards training and coaching, and we don't have to start this all over? We ensure that you're implementing sustainable actions, you're writing sustainable plans, you're implementing sustainable policies, and you are day-to-day managing sustainable procedures. It's important for you to sustain not just the internal operations, not just your external relationships, and sustainability, a major part for you and what you're usually measured upon, and whether or not you're an effective executive director, is your ability to get money, your ability to sustain that nonprofit financially. So part of that sustain is, are you, and we talk about this in your audit, when you're looking at the finances aspect of your organization, what are you currently riding on? Are you winning? And if you're not winning those awards, have you considered hiring an organization or a firm such as MTA Visions, who is a global corporate social responsibility firm that has access to corporations, that has grant writing experience to help you not only identify various and diverse modes of funding, but to help you write it. And again, we go through this when we're doing your KSA audit in our executive director masterclass, where we help you to define yourself, not just the science of you as a leadership, your style and your profile, but also the art of your leadership. And this is where we're looking at, what are some of your weaknesses? What are some of the gaps that you have in this role? And how can you lean on consultants, part-time employees to help you to close those gaps? So a major part of you being deemed an effective executive director of a nonprofit organization is your ability to get money for that organization. And that's something that we help you do as you go through our master classes, as you go through our coaching. And if you hire to bring us on to help you with your philanthropy engagement and grant writing, we make sure that you're sustainable, not just in the financial just alone, but in other areas of organization. Another key area of sustainability, and we'll give you this as a freebie that is detailed and outlined in your masterclass, is you need to ensure that you are putting in place all generations across organization. Oftentimes you'll hear, well, younger people don't have as much experience, so we can't put them in leadership roles, but there's a role for them within that organization. So you need to make sure you have Gen Zers, millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers. We also hear that baby boomers need to retire. And that may be true. But in a nonprofit organization, in order for you to ensure that the mission, purpose, and goals of the organization is going to be sustainable, you need to make sure that your organization cuts across generations. It's the only way you're going to make sure that you can protect the legacy of the organization, ensuring you have seniors that are, or seasoned leaders, members, volunteers, team members that can look at the organization and its mission, or that issue or that cause from 50 years up until their time now. Gen Zs that's looking at that problem, cause, the mission from a perspective that's adding much more pizzazz to it, or adding the aspect of technology and leveraging social media on that mission, purpose, and goal. You need to make sure you have all generations as a part of that. All right, we talk about the top 5 keys. There are actually 50 keys that are necessary for you to become an effective executive director that leads you to elevating your leadership style, enhancing the operations, and empowering your team. But the top 5 keys that we talked about today was you, understanding yourself, the art and the science. Key number 2, plan. Strategic plan is your Bible. Key number 3, audit. And that is not just your operations audit internally, but externally, not just the macro, but peeling that banana, every single layer of organization at least once a quarter. Key number 4, that's building your team internally, building partnerships, access to partners, building a volunteer base externally, building the brand of the organization. And number 5, sustainability, or sustain. This key is really important. And we gave you 2 freebies on this: sustainability from the financial perspective and sustainability from an intergenerational perspective, and ensuring that your team is diverse, representing diverse members across various generations that are present today. So with that, next steps. So you've learned all these keys. You've learned our MTACALE definitions of what it takes to be an effective executive director. We gave you some action steps to take into place by doing a quick snippet of your business audit. And again, this was just a sample. You would need to make sure you actually reach out to a qualified advisor or reach out to a member of the MTA Visions global team to help you to actually dissect your organization and look at what type of audit that you would need. We talked about the 5 keys that you need in order to become an effective executive director. And so now you're wondering, okay, now what? We heard us mention quite a bit our masterclass for executive directors. So you have the opportunity to join us for future webinars on leadership development. We have master classes on operations 101, where we break down all different aspects of your operations. And we actually give you the assessment that we utilize. So that way you don't have to keep us the entire engagement. Our goal as a firm as well is to ensure that our consulting, the way we deliver consultancy, is also sustainable. We want to equip you, but then empower you to move forward beyond the engagement. Masterclass on team building. You might be saying, all right, Ms. Adonis, I'm pretty good with operations. I have a good handle. We might still need to bring you guys on to just do a quick audit to make sure we're fully up to date in all areas of operations. I, as myself as a leader, I understand myself, both the art and the science. I've been doing this for a while, but I would love to take a master class on team building to help motivate my team. I am an A+ leader, but I can't seem to get everyone on the team on the same page. Then a master class on team building is one you might want to consider. Highly encouraged assessment called the Business ID. We go through Leadership 101 in depth, operations audit in depth, strategic planning in depth. Coaching, you might say, might not need another webinar like this one. Might not need an assessment, or I'm not sure if I need an assessment, but I would like to work with you one-on-one. I would like to dive in deeper on some of the things you talked about today. As pertains to leadership, stakeholder management, funding. We have one-on-one coaching that's also available for you as executive director. We are the executive director's hidden playbook. Beyond that strategic plan, you get to call on us for your next place. When you're on that court, day to day, fulfilling the mission and goals and purpose of your organization, you get to reach out to us and say, hey, I need help on this. And usually, oftentimes, it's team building, inspiring you to keep going, rebuilding the organization, restructuring, and most importantly, more often than all the others, it's funding. Or you might say, I just want more information. I love the 5 keys. You mentioned that there's more keys. You can just get our ebook that really breaks down the 50 keys to becoming $1 million executive director. So we don't just want nonprofits just to be just making it by, just struggling for grants year to year and wondering whether or not we're going to have enough to keep our staff. And we can't even think about expanding and doing more. And we would love to do more impact, but we can't because we don't have the funding. So our 50 keys is positioning you to become $1 million executive director. And if you're already an executive director that's managing an organization that's at the $1 million mark, well, we want to get you to multi-millions. These strategies, you might need to refresh them to help you amplify the $1 million mark that you're already at, to help you to get to tens of millions of dollars. With that, I invite you to stay in touch. You can find me on LinkedIn at www.linkedin.com/in/week of people. You can also send an email to our team at teach@mtavisions.com if you're interested in any of the previous webinars, assessments, coaching, ebooks that I've talked about. If you want to just learn more about what is all involved in your Executive Director Masterclass. And if you complete our survey, and this is sending us a video testimonial of what did you think about today's session on becoming an effective executive director, 5 keys to elevating your leadership style, enhancing operations, and empowering your team. So make sure your live testimony include your name, your current profession, and a couple of prompts to finish your sentence. After today's webinar, hit the name of the webinar, I feel empowered to do X. And please let us know what were some of your pain points and how the webinar helped you to start thinking about some new things. And let us know how you would like to keep in touch and reach out to us and how we can be helpful to you. And also let us know which one of the top 5 most resonated with you and why. You send that live video testimonial in and you will get 50% off any related product or service that's pertaining to the Executive Director Masterclass, the Executive Director Sessions, and related. So with that, I am Maritza Adonis, and I'd like to thank you for attending today's session on becoming an effective executive director, 5 keys to elevating your leadership style, enhancing operations, and empowering your team. Today's session was brought to you by MTA Visions LLC, powered by MTA Visions Center for Advocacy, Leadership, and Entrepreneurship. Thank you. Until next time. MTACALE Center for Advocacy, Leadership, and Entrepreneurship champions innovative professional development, leadership training, and continuing education for change agents committed to pioneering the future for social good. Powered by MTA Visions, LLC. All rights reserved, 2024.